The biggest idiot in the room usually thinks he's the smartest, and the smartest person in the room is often questioning himself. That's not coincidence. It's a psychological trap that decides who gains influence and who gets manipulated. Niccolo Machiavelli understood this weakness in human nature, and he used it. In this video, you'll discover why ignorance creates confidence, why intelligence creates doubt, and how this dynamic silently shapes hierarchy around you. By the end, you won't just recognize it in others, you'll recognize it in yourself. The confidence illusion, why certainty feels like intelligence. The most dangerous kind of ignorance does not look confused, it looks confident. Have you ever noticed how the least informed person in the room often speaks with the most certainty? Their tone is firm, their conclusions are absolute, their opinions leave no space for doubt, and that certainty convinces people, because the human brain mistakes confidence for competence. When someone speaks without hesitation, we assume they understand deeply. When someone expresses doubt, we assume they lack knowledge. This is the illusion. Intelligence appears cautious. Ignorance appears decisive. Niccolo Machiavelli understood this dynamic long before modern psychology gave it a name. People are influenced more by perceived strength than by quiet accuracy. A bold claim delivered firmly often defeats a nuanced truth delivered carefully. But here is the hidden mechanism. True intelligence sees complexity. It recognizes variables. It anticipates consequences. That awareness introduces restraint. The intelligent mind hesitates not from weakness, but from comprehension. The shallow mind does not see complexity. It sees a simplified version of reality. Fewer variables mean fewer doubts. Fewer doubts mean stronger conviction, and conviction feels powerful. This is where the illusion becomes dangerous. The uninformed person interprets their certainty as proof of intelligence. They mistake emotional clarity for intellectual depth. They do not question themselves because they do not perceive what they are missing. Meanwhile, the truly capable individual is evaluating risks, measuring context, and adjusting conclusions. From the outside, that caution can appear uncertain, so the loud voice dominates the room. This is not accidental, it is psychological. Certainty reduces cognitive strain for listeners. It provides clarity, it removes ambiguity. People prefer answers that feel final. Niccolo Machiavelli would observe this carefully. He knew that appearing decisive often influences more than being correct. But he also understood that overconfidence without substance collapses under pressure. The illusion holds only until reality intervenes. And when reality exposes the gap between certainty and competence, the consequences are immediate. The real question is not who sounds intelligent. It is who survives when their certainty is tested. The danger of partial knowledge, how surface understanding creates arrogance. The problem is not ignorance. The real danger is half-knowledge. A person who knows nothing usually stays quiet. A person who knows a little believes they understand everything. That small amount of information creates a false sense of mastery. And that false mastery becomes arrogance. When someone learns the surface layer of a subject, they feel immediate clarity. The basics are simple. The framework looks clean. The conclusions appear obvious. That simplicity creates confidence, but simplicity at the surface hides complexity underneath. Niccolo Machiavelli understood that shallow understanding produces reckless decisions. A ruler who thinks he understands power after reading a few principles becomes predictable. He applies strategy without context. He imitates strength without grasping consequences. Partial knowledge removes doubt without removing ignorance. And doubt is protective. When you lack awareness of what you do not know, you stop questioning your conclusions. You defend them aggressively. You speak with conviction because you cannot see the deeper layers you are missing. That is where arrogance is born. Surface understanding creates the illusion of competence. It allows someone to speak fluently about a topic without having tested it under pressure. They repeat phrases. They quote ideas. They mimic expertise. But mimicry collapses when challenged. Real understanding survives scrutiny. because it has encountered complexity. It has adjusted, it has failed and refined itself. Partial knowledge avoids that refinement stage. This is why overconfident individuals often resist correction. New information threatens their self-image. Admitting ignorance feels like losing status. Niccolo Machiavelli would never rely on surface insight. He observed human behavior over time. He tested patterns against outcomes. He respected uncertainty because it revealed depth. The arrogant mind protects its limited understanding. The intelligent mind expands beyond it. Half knowledge speaks loudly. Depth listens longer. And when pressure rises, surface confidence disappears first. The question is not how much you know. It is whether what you know has been tested beyond the surface. The ego shield. Why admitting ignorance feels like weakness. The most fragile thing in a room full of opinions is not truth. It is ego. Watch carefully what happens when someone is confronted with information they don't understand. Instead of curiosity, there is tension. Instead of questions, there is resistance. The face tightens. The tone hardens. The posture shifts. Why? Because ignorance feels like exposure, and exposure feels dangerous. For many people, intelligence is not a skill, it is identity. They don't just want to be informed, they want to be perceived as capable. The moment that image is threatened, the mind reacts defensively. This is where the ego shield activates. Rather than admitting uncertainty, the person reframes the conversation. They speak with certainty. They dismiss nuance. They redirect the focus. Anything to avoid the simple sentence, "I don't know." That sentence feels like surrender. But here is the psychological trap. When you refuse to admit ignorance, you freeze your growth. You protect your image at the cost of your development. You defend what you know instead of expanding it. Niccolo Machiavelli understood appearance matters, but he also understood misjudging reality is fatal. A ruler who believes he understands more than he does invites collapse. Overconfidence blinds strategy. The ego shield blocks correction. Correction blocks refinement. Refinement is where intelligence actually forms. This is why the loudest voice is often the least flexible. Flexibility requires self-awareness. Self-awareness requires discomfort. And discomfort threatens pride. So pride chooses defense. But defense is reactive. True power is adaptive. The person who can say, "I don't understand this," yet gains immediate advantage. They gain information. They gain perspective. They gain control over their blind spots. That does not weaken authority. It strengthens it. Because controlled vulnerability signals stability, not fragility. The ego shield feels protective in the short term. In the long term, it isolates. And isolation from correction creates illusion. Illusion creates failure. The real weakness is not lacking knowledge. It is being too proud to acquire it. If this exposed something uncomfortable, comment depth below. So I know you're seeing the deeper layer, and subscribe if you want more strategic breakdowns like this. Authority without depth. How loudness replaces competence. There is a strange illusion in modern society. The loudest voice often appears to be the strongest. Certainty delivered with volume feels convincing. Fast speech feels intelligent. Aggressive confidence feels dominant. And to an untrained mind, dominance is confused with competence. But noise is not depth. It is camouflage. When someone lacks understanding, they often compensate with intensity. They interrupt. They over-explain. They repeat their point with increasing force, as if repetition alone can convert opinion into fact. This is not mastery. It is insecurity amplified. Real competence is calm. It does not need performance. It does not rush to overpower a room. It allows silence. It tolerates disagreement. It survives scrutiny. Niccolo Machiavelli observed that authority is not sustained through theatrics. It is sustained through results. A leader who shouts constantly reveals instability. A strategist who reacts emotionally reveals uncertainty. The inexperienced rely on presence. The capable rely on precision. Loudness creates an illusion of control because it pressures others into submission. Many people avoid confrontation. So when someone speaks forcefully, others withdraw. That withdrawal is misinterpreted as agreement. But agreement born from pressure is fragile. The moment pressure disappears, resistance returns. This is why shallow authority collapses quickly. It depends on constant dominance. It requires constant reinforcement. It cannot survive calm challenge. True authority operates differently. It is comfortable with measured speech. It answers only what needs to be answered. It does not chase validation through volume. Depth makes noise unnecessary. And here is the psychological shift most people never notice. When someone needs to be heard, they speak louder. When someone knows they will be heard, they speak less. The crowd may initially follow the one who sounds confident, but over time, patterns reveal truth. Surface-level thinkers expose themselves through inconsistency. Their arguments shift. Their logic bends. Their energy fluctuates, depending on opposition. Competence, however, remains stable. It does not fluctuate with audience reaction. It does not depend on applause. And eventually, stability always outlasts performance. Loud authority may dominate attention, but quiet depth commands respect. And in the long game of power, respect is what endures. The Dunning-Kruger trap, when ignorance removes self-doubt. There is a psychological phenomenon known as the Dunning-Kruger Effect. It describes a simple but brutal pattern. The less someone knows about a subject, the more certain they feel about their understanding of it. Why? Because awareness creates doubt, and ignorance removes it. When someone has only surface-level knowledge, they cannot see the complexity beneath it. They see the outline of the mountain and assume they have reached the summit. The unknown remains invisible to them, so it never threatens their certainty. Depth introduces hesitation. Beginners feel sure. Experts feel cautious. This is the trap. When a person lacks depth, they also lack the ability to measure their own incompetence. They do not know what they do not know, and without that awareness, self-doubt disappears. On the surface, this looks powerful. Confidence without hesitation, strong opinions without pause, decisions without internal conflict. But that certainty is built on missing information. Niccolo Machiavelli understood that overconfidence blinds rulers faster than weakness ever could. A prince who misjudges his own capability invites disaster. A strategist who overestimates his position exposes himself to opponents he never considered. True intelligence creates internal friction. It questions assumptions. It re-evaluates conclusions. It anticipates unseen variables. The ignorant skip that stage entirely. They feel clarity because they have not encountered complexity. And that is why they often speak boldly. They are not wrestling with nuance. They are operating inside a simplified model of reality. Over time, this becomes predictable. Their arguments lack flexibility. Their confidence collapses under pressure. Their certainty erodes the moment a deeper thinker introduces variables they never considered. But until that confrontation happens, they remain unaware. This is why ignorance can feel empowering in the short term. It removes self-doubt. It eliminates hesitation. It simplifies the world into manageable narratives. Yet in power dynamics, simplicity without awareness is vulnerability, because the individual who sees complexity always has leverage over the one who does not. Confidence is not proof of competence. Sometimes it is proof of limited exposure. And once reality applies pressure, exposure becomes unavoidable. Why truly intelligent people appear less certain? The smartest person in the room is rarely the most confident-sounding one. In fact, true intelligence often appears hesitant. There is a reason for this. When someone understands a subject deeply, they also understand its complexity. They see variables others overlook. They recognize patterns, exceptions, hidden risks. And once you see those layers, absolute certainty becomes impossible. Depth creates caution. Surface knowledge creates boldness. An intelligent mind runs simulations internally before speaking. It considers alternative interpretations. It anticipates counter-arguments. It questions its own conclusion before presenting it publicly. That pause is not doubt in identity. It is discipline in thought. Niccolo Machiavelli observed that wise leaders never reveal complete certainty in unstable environments. They leave room for adaptation. They remain flexible because rigidity breaks under pressure. The arrogant appear decisive because they simplify reality. The intelligent appear careful because they understand reality resists simplification. This difference is subtle but powerful. To an untrained observer, confidence equals authority. But over time, exaggerated certainty exposes itself. It cannot adjust when new evidence appears. It resists correction. It defends outdated positions. Meanwhile, the truly intelligent evolve. They update. They refine. They speak in probabilities, not absolutes. They say based on this information instead of this is the truth. That distinction signals awareness of limitation. And awareness of limitation is strength. Because someone who knows their blind spots can protect them. Someone who believes they have none is defenseless. There is also a psychological factor at play. The more you learn, the more you encounter how much remains unknown. This realization humbles the mind. It forces respect for uncertainty. Beginners feel clarity because they have seen only the surface. Experts feel restraint because they have seen the depth. Certainty is easy when complexity is invisible. Caution is natural when complexity is understood. And in power dynamics, the person who thinks in layers always outmaneuvers the person who thinks in headlines. Intelligence does not shout. It calculates. And calculation often looks quieter than confidence. But in the long game, quiet calculation always wins. Strategic silence, how real power avoids displaying intelligence. Intelligent people do not feel the need to prove they are intelligent. That urge belongs to insecurity. Strategic silence is not ignorance. It is control. When someone constantly displays knowledge, corrects others publicly, or dominates conversations with expertise, they reveal something subtle. They want recognition. They want validation for their intellect. Real power does not chase validation. It withholds. Niccolo Machiavelli warned that a ruler should avoid unnecessary displays of superiority. When you expose your full capability too early, you create resistance. You create envy. You invite challenge. Displaying intelligence aggressively can threaten others, and threatened people unite. Strategic minds understand timing. They observe first. They measure the room. They speak only when words shift the outcome. This creates leverage, because information revealed too soon loses value. When you remain silent, others underestimate you. They assume you lack insight. They miscalculate your depth. They speak freely around you. They reveal their positions without pressure. Silence collects data. Noise exposes it. The intelligent strategist uses this asymmetry. There is also psychological authority in restraint. When someone contributes rarely but precisely, their words carry weight. Anticipation builds around their input. Attention sharpens when they begin speaking. Scarcity amplifies impact. Overexposure dilutes it. This is why those who truly understand power often appear reserved. They do not argue over minor points. They do not correct every mistake. They do not compete in debates that produce no strategic gain. They conserve influence. And conservation is strength. Displaying intelligence is satisfying. Deploying intelligence is effective. There is a difference. The first feeds ego. The second secures position. In competitive environments, the person who speaks the most often reveals their strategy unintentionally. The one who speaks selectively retains unpredictability. And unpredictability is leverage. Real authority does not need constant proof. It chooses when to surface. It chooses when to remain hidden. And that discipline transforms intelligence from a trait into a weapon. Because the greatest advantage is not being seen as the smartest. It is being impossible to read. Most people don't suffer from a lack of intelligence. They suffer from the illusion of it. We began with the confidence illusion, how certainty often disguises ignorance. The loudest voice feels convincing, but confidence alone proves nothing. Then we exposed the danger of partial knowledge, where surface understanding creates arrogance without depth. From there, we examined the ego shield, why admitting ignorance feels like weakness, and how that defensive instinct freezes growth. We saw how authority without depth replaces competence with volume, turning noise into temporary dominance. Then came the Dunning-Kruger trap, how ignorance removes self-doubt and creates dangerous overconfidence. After that, we looked at why truly intelligent people appear less certain, because depth introduces caution and awareness of complexity. And finally, strategic silence, the discipline of withholding intelligence instead of displaying it. Because real power does not compete for validation. It calculates. It waits. It speaks only when necessary. If there's one pattern across all 7 sections, it's this. Intelligence is not performance. It is positioning. The person who knows the least often feels the most certain. The person who knows the most often feels the most aware of what remains unseen. That awareness is not weakness. It is leverage. If this shifted your perspective, hit like. Comment the word awareness below so I know you're thinking beyond the surface. Share this with someone who mistakes volume for intelligence. And subscribe, because the next video will go deeper into how perception quietly shapes hierarchy. I'll see you in the next one.